Good evening, everyone, and first of all, a very happy New Year to you all. And it's lovely to welcome you back here for the one, two, three, four, fifth of our 23-24 lecture series. The lecture this evening is hopefully we're going to be joined by a lot of members of the Kent Cricket Heritage Trust as well, of whom our speaker is the chair. And of course, it is a free lecture. It is free to all members of CHAZ, but if any of our guests do enjoy it, then hopefully they may like to become a member of our society, of which the details will be shown at the end of our talk, or you may wish to make a one-off donation, for which we would be very grateful, but that will be shown at the end. For now, it's time to welcome our speaker for this evening, Jonathan Rice, the chair of the Kent Cricket Heritage Trust, and he's speaking to us today from his home in Hythe, and his topic will be the history of the St Lawrence Cricket Ground in Canterbury. Jonathan, it's lovely to see you. Welcome to CHAZ, and thank you very much for coming to speak to our members this evening.
Thanks very much, Bob. It's a great pleasure, and I'm very glad I haven't got to go out on a cold night like this, but I can sit in the warmth of my home like everybody else.
You are very welcome, sir. We're very happy to be able to provide that for you. Are you happy to take any questions at the end of the talk if time permits, sir?
Yes, most certainly. Yes, I'll do my best to answer them, of course.
Thank you so much. Well, if everyone has any questions for the speaker, perhaps you could use the chat bar, and then we'll come back at the end of the talk, and I can read them out so that everyone knows what they are. In the meantime, if you can try and make sure to turn the videos off and the sound off, just because it helps to speed up the transmission of the data. Thank you so much. So, Jonathan Rice, the chair of the Kent Cricket Heritage Trust, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much indeed, Bob, and welcome to everybody. I don't know how many of you are out there. I think it's something in the 40s, but I hope you can all hear me. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is the history maybe, of the Spitfire St Lawrence Ground at Canterbury. This is a ground that Kent have in headquarters of Kent County Cricket Club, and it's where we have been playing for well over 175 years now, I think it is. So let's have a look at St Lawrence himself. I'm sure that Canterbury Archeological Society people know this already, but St Lawrence was the second Archbishop of Canterbury, taking over from St Augustine. Not all Archbishop of Canterbury's these days are canonized, but St Lawrence certainly was the second in a row to reach sainthood. He was Archbishop of Canterbury from 604 roughly to 619, but actually the ground was named, or the area around there was named for the St Lawrence Hospital, which of course was named after him, which was a leper hospital built in the 12th century, and it went into disrepair in Elizabethan times in the 16th century, but the area was called St Lawrence from that time, or from earlier on. Just trying. Here we go. The St Lawrence House was the next thing that was built on that site. Once the leper hospital had collapsed completely, a large mansion was built in the late 1500s. It was called St Lawrence House, and it was bought by the Rooke family. Sir George Rooke, who picture you can see there, was the man who captured Gibraltar from the Spanish in the early 1600s, and he was born there. I have subsequently been to Gibraltar as part of my research for this speech, of course, and you will see me with another primate in another picture there. The house, St. Lawrence House, was actually pulled down in the early 19th century, replaced by another house called Nackington House. And of course, as you probably all know, one end of the current St. Lawrence Ground is called the Nackington Road end. And that's because the Nackington Road runs past it. And so Nackington is an area, is part of the story from then on. Cricket, of course, was not at this stage part of the story, but by the late 18th century, the 1790s and this sort of thing, cricket was beginning to take hold in this part of Canterbury, and there were a number of fields around there which were almost certainly used for playing cricket on. By this time, the ground around here was owned by the Sons family, Sons or Sondes. I've never quite worked out how to pronounce his name, but the fourth Baron Sons was the one who owned the ground at the time that it became a cricket field. The story of how the St. Lawrence Ground became the headquarters of Kent cricket is connected to the development of Canterbury Cricket Week. Canterbury Cricket Week began in 1841 or 42, depending on how you look at it, when the matches were, a few matches were played at the Beverley Ground, which was on the other side, roughly on the other side of Canterbury. And the Beverley Club were the people who ran that. There was at that stage no official Kent County Cricket Club. However, after a few years, the idea of playing the Canterbury Week matches, which were becoming very, very popular at the Beverley Ground, was deemed to be not satisfactory. But Baron Sons said, well, you can use the ground here, which I have at the other end of the ground, at the other end of the city, which we can turn into a cricket pitch. And in 1846, this was agreed by the Beverley Club talking to Baron Sons. And in 1847, the first game was played at the St. Lawrence, what is now the St. Lawrence Ground. The ground had been used as grazing grounds for his cattle, and it was and sheep, I suppose, as well. I'm not quite sure what animals he had. Could have had anything for all I know. But it was a nice, comparatively level ground, and it was deemed to be very satisfactory. At this stage, the Beverley Club employed a man called Fuller Pilch, who was a great cricketer of his era, to be the groundsman, and he prepared the pitch sufficiently that the first matches were played in 1847, the first as part of Canterbury Cricket Week. The club didn't exist as the Kent County Cricket Club until 1870. In fact, December 1870, there was a meeting of the interested parties of the Beverley Club and the another club which was calling itself the Kent County Cricket Club, which was based over in West Kent, to form one Kent County Cricket Club. And at that meeting, the club was formed, and it was deemed that the headquarters of the club would be Canterbury. And from then on, from 1870 onwards, that's 154 years, 3.5 years, the club has been headquartered at the St. Lawrence Ground, Canterbury. And of course, they had been playing cricket by that time for nearly a quarter of a century at that ground, but it was the first time that the Kent County Cricket Club existed. The ground was still owned, of course, by the Sons family, and the club rented it out originally for a fee of £20 a year, and that went up to about £75 a year by the time Lord Harris, who was the Lord High Everything of Kent Cricket, decided that was a bit expensive, and he would like to see if he could negotiate a purchase of the ground. £75 a year was the equivalent, I suppose, of about well, £6,000 now, and so it was quite a sum that they wanted to avoid by buying the ground outright. This they managed to do. Sons was quite all right about wanting to sell to them, although I think Lord Harris knocked at least £500 off the price with his negotiation, and in fact, the final price paid for the ground was £4,500 in 1996. That is the equivalent of about £900,000 now, I suppose. So still cheap at the price. If the club were to sell the St Lawrence ground now and put up multi-story heaven knows what's on it, they would certainly get more than £900,000 for it. But from then on, and still today, of course, the ground is owned by the county club. This is a picture that I hope that many of you are aware of, showing what the ground looked like in 1906. The artist Albert Chevalier Taylor was commissioned by Lord Harris to paint a representation of the game being played in 1906 during Canterbury Week. 1906 was the first year that Kent won the championship title. They'd been striving for many, many years, but in 1906 we won. And in Canterbury Week, we played Lancashire, well, played two games, but one of them was against Lancashire. And this was the game that we won and which really set Kent on the way to winning the title that year. And Lord Harris commissioned Chevalier Taylor, who had already painted Lord Harris at a previous time, to create a picture, but he wanted to have every member of the Kent side clearly represented. He wanted Colin Blythe, who we'll hear a bit more about later, to be bowling, and he wanted the Lancashire batsman, Johnny Tildesley, whose backside is all you can see there, to be batting. The reason he wanted Johnny Tildesley to be batting was because earlier in the season, when Kent had played Lancashire up in Lancashire, Tildesley had scored 295 not out against Kent, and Harris was very, very impressed by that. That is still, incidentally, the highest score that has ever been made against Kent in a county championship match. And we're one of the few counties that hasn't had a treble hundred hit against it. So that's what the picture shows. There's a certain amount of poetic license in there. The tower of the cathedral is very, very clear, which probably it wouldn't have been quite so clear in real life in those days. And of course, you see the pavilion absolutely full of people, which it would have been in those days in the Canterbury Week. And the sun was shining. It was a good sunny summer that time. This picture, this painting, was owned by the club until 2006, when financial privations meant that it was more sensible for us to sell it than to hold on to it. In fact, for many years, it had already been displayed at Lord's by the MCC. We had loaned it to Lord's because we couldn't afford the insurance on it. When we sold it in 2006, 100 years after the painting was, after the representation of it, it went for £650,000, which was at the time the highest amount of money ever paid for a cricket painting. That record has subsequently been beaten by a Lowry painting, which I think is a bit of a cheat. But it's still the most obviously representative painting of cricket in the early 1900s. It was the first, really the first painting that showed a real cricket match at a real in real life. I don't want to go on too much about this because I could go on forever because I have written a book about this. But the interesting quirk in it is that the batsman who is next backing up as the non-facing batsman is actually a Lancashire player called Billy Findlay. Now, Findlay wasn't playing in that match, and he's the only sort of false item in that picture. But the person who was playing was golly, the name has escaped me now. I should have checked this more clearly. The chap who was meant to be opening the batting with Johnny Tildesley, and therefore at the other end, was also playing football for Everton, and Everton wouldn't let him come down to London to be the person who to pose for Chevalier Taylor so that he could be included in the painting. However, Billy Findlay, who had played practically every game for Lancashire that season, but not by chance this one against Kent, he had recently retired and had come down to Surrey to be assistant secretary, or to be actually secretary, at the Oval. So he was available in London for Chevalier Taylor to paint. So that's why he was in the picture. But that gives you, I think the main point of showing it right now is that it gives you a very good idea of what the ground would have looked like in 1906.